Bye. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel. Tonight's going to be bookish content. For today's video, we are actually continuing my Death Note adventures. I will be reading the Death Note short stories collection. So I read the original Death Note series in 2022 and I vlogged that experience. It is 2 separate vlogs and I will post them up above. I'll also link them down in the description. I recently discovered the short story collection watching someone's YouTube video. He mentioned this and I was so intrigued that they decided to continue the story in a sense. From what I was reading in the back, it's all across the universe. So some stories are going to be from before we met Light, others are going to be afterwards, in between the story, all sorts of things. That's all I know about it though. I saw it at Target and picked it up. It was the last copy and I didn't want any of the teenagers looking over my shoulder to grab it because y'all weren't even alive yet when that anime came out when I first got into this series. All jokes, if you're a teenager and love Death Note, good for you. You got taste. But seriously, it was the last copy at Target, so I quickly grabbed it, and that was months ago, and I'm just reading it now on February 2nd. I'm gonna try to read this whole thing in one day just because there's other books I want to read. I have work tomorrow. It's a whole thing. We'll see how far I get into it. That's basically all I have to say for this introduction, so let's jump right into it. Okay, so story 1, See Kira, is done. I don't really know how I'm feeling about this so far, but what's happening in See Kira is that it's years, we have another time skip, so it's years after Light died. Someone else is now using the notebook to kill the elderly of Japan, but the twist is he's doing it after they asked to be killed, which I think opens up some discussions that unfortunately weren't really explored in this. I mean, it is a short story, so you can only do so much. I personally thought the story was gonna delve into human euthanization, because we euthanize pets. But what about human euthanization? What if they're asking to die because they can't take it anymore? He's having trouble because he is L. The world doesn't know L is dead. So he's like, what would L do? How do I keep up the charade? So he has this internal conflict that's, again, not really explored. But Sakura TV, people are arguing. There's the pro-Kira people. There's the anti-Kira people. The pros are saying, because now the age is 60. It goes down to 60. The pro-Kira people are like, well, we don't need old people. They're burdens to society. And then the anti-Kira people are like, well, no, they're not. We need their knowledge so we can't repeat the past. So it's a whole thing. And then there's a mass suicide attempt. That's what I'm calling it. They all start showing their faces. They're like, no, Kira, kill me. And then Kira is killing them. So Nier does go live. He basically says, I want nothing to do with this case. The Japanese have to do this. And then the public's going crazy, and he's telling people, this is not Kira. He says earlier in the story, too, it's just an insult. It's called See Kira for cheap Kira. Then he just ends it with, here's my personal statement. You are a murderer. And then we see the Shinigami world again. And because another Shinigami dropped a notebook just so she could get some apples. But she was saying what happened is that he took it to heart. The new Kira took it to heart. He stared at a wall for 3 days and then committed suicide, wrote his own name in the Death Note, and Ryuk had a flashback to Light, and Light was saying to use a Death Note, you have to be very strong-willed. So he tells Midora that you picked a weak human. That's it. That's the end. That's it. No deeper discussions about human euthanization. Is it really murder if they're asking to be killed? What's the issue? And I don't really want to give my own opinion on this just because there's very little nuance in this. I think it opens up the discussion to nuance, but this chapter is less than 50 pages, so there wasn't a lot going for it. So interesting ideas were introduced. I just wish they were developed more, and I do find it interesting that this guy, once he was called a murderer, he could not handle it. And I think it does go back to one of the morals of Death Note that Nier was talking about, that any normal person, once they find out the power of the Death Note, they would be disgusted. Granted, this isn't the exact person that Nier is talking about because he still used the Death Note, but it's not lost to me he used it for a different way than Light did. Having said that, time for the next chapter. This is fucking Donald Trump. Okay, so I liked Akira a lot better than the previous short story. I thought this was a really cool way to use the Death Note. So we get introduced to this kid named Minoru. Ryuk is just bored again, trying to find someone to uplift him, blah, blah, blah. And it's now 2019. So first we meet him in the present day, 2019, but then we have a flashback that's 2 years ago in 2017. And he receives this notebook. Ryu gives it to him thinking he's really, really smart. And the kid just asks him 2 questions, like, how far away can you be? And then what was the other fucking question? Who else can see you? But then, like, kind of with no explanation, he's like, okay, come back in 2 years. And Ryuk was like, okay. So he comes back in 2 years, and Minoru has this plan to sell it so that he himself doesn't actually have to use it, but use it in the sense of writing someone's name. So he has Ryuk go on national TV, not national TV, it's Sakura TV, just holds up a piece of paper. People are like, whoa, because to them, the paper's floating. The Japanese task force freaks out. Nier sees it, and Japanese task force is freaking out, understandably. And then the Americans are also kind of freaking out, but not Nier. Hal and Rester are like, we need to go find him. And Nier's like, but is he committing a crime? He's just selling the notebook. So at this point, I thought the conversation was going to be like the conversation we have in America about guns. Like, obviously the shooter is the bad guy, but is the seller also a bad guy? That's where I thought it was going, and surprisingly, it did not. And given what the short story is, I'm actually okay with that they didn't really delve into that. But Nier was like, he's technically not committing a crime, he's just selling, so let's just watch how it unfolds. And Nier has a fascination with Minoru, not knowing it's Minoru, obviously, and actually wants to meet him, which I was looking forward to, ended up not getting that. People are bidding, Minoru's letting them bid, and it's getting to the point where it's countries bidding, it's not just people. So now you have the president of the United States, who's obviously Trump. It's not explicitly said, but you can't miss it. It's Trump, and I think it ended up being like Trump versus China. Trump ends up buying it, but now the question is, how is he gonna disperse the money? Because Hal and Rester are like, well, we could just look into the guy whose bank account it enters. That's how we'll catch Akira. And Nier very obviously doesn't want to catch Minoru, like, at all. And I was wondering too, and I was like, because Minoru just made such a big deal about the whole, like, cyberspace and how, like, cyber crimes are a thing. I was like, how are you gonna get away with this? And then it announced that Trump, or the president of the United States, is to disperse the money evenly to everyone who has this bank account, to the Yotsuba bank account. And essentially, that's how he hides it, because like 1 million people have it. That's 1 million names to go through. Nier even says, in the first time I became L, I must admit defeat, but he has a smile on his face, so he's glad he has to admit defeat. So him and Ryuk, too, both acknowledge how incredibly smart Minoru is, and they, like, basically congratulated him. That's where they're at. And, you know, Minoru says, like, I actually want nothing to do with this Death Note, because that was one of the things Nier mentions in the other series. Like I said, like, normal people would be disgusted with its power. And I guess we can argue that Minoru, in a way, is normal, because he was disgusted by the power. Even in the flashback, he says, I can't do that. I can't murder people. And in the present day, he was like, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to murder people. I just want to live a long, happy life. Never speak to me again. And Ryuk was like, okay. He goes to Trump, gives him the notebook. Now there's a plot twist, because he got yelled at by the king. The king of the Shinigami world is pissed that Ryuk would let this happen. So now there's a new official rule, and I felt so bad for Minoru. The new official rule is that those who buy or sell the Death Note will die. So Trump freaks out. Ryuk says it's your choice. You could either buy it and you die, but at least your country will have possession of it, or you could just give it up and live. Trump decides to give it up. So Ryuk says, like, you value your life over your country. And, like, I know this is a fictionalized Trump, but I can't really blame someone for putting their lives first. Like, I get it. And Ryuk was like, all right, deuces. And then he has this internal monologue. He's like, should I go tell Minoru? He doesn't know the new rule. But death gods must keep their word. He promised never to come back, so he doesn't go back. A month later, when they're allowed to take their money, Minoru has a heart attack in the bank. He dies, and Ryuk's a little, I don't want to say, like, upset about it. Like, he's not screaming and crying. He's just casually, like, writing his notebook. He wrote the name under Light Yagami, so, you know, there's your Easter egg. And he said, you know, it's a shame, because the guy was really smart, had a great plan to get all this money without, you know, using the notebook. But then the chapter ends with what I was thinking. I was thinking this at the same time. Like, that's the thing. Like, sometimes I try to read between the lines, but then the Japanese writers kind of just explicitly say the point they were getting across. But Ryuk explicitly says it. Those who use the notebook, no matter what, meet an unfortunate end. So yes, Minoru had better intentions than Light. However, he still used it in some way so he had to die in the hands of Ryuk. I had a lot of fun with that short story. I liked that a lot better than Cheap Kira. That was kind of dumb. I didn't like Cheap Kira at all. No, like, the more I think about it, the more I dislike it. However, it is after 5 o'clock. It is time for dinner, and then we'll go from there, because I think 70 pages left. I might as well just finish this book tonight. Moral of the story, though, just don't ever touch a Death Note. Don't even go near it. And if they force you to touch it like Ryuk did to Minoru, he literally plopped it on his head. If they force you to touch it, then you're fucking screwed. Good luck. Okay, and we're back. I also read another chapter of this. It was just a bunch of short 4-panel comics that were actually pretty funny. The funniest one being like Light and L asking like what color is down there for Misa. And I'm like, okay, this is gross. This is just fan service. It's gonna be disgusting. And it ended up just being about socks. And I'm like, y'all got me. That's actually kind of funny. That's hilarious, actually. Y'all got me. Props to you. It's funny when they tease fan service, but then they switch it. Like, there's one point where you see Misa's backside and her ass cheeks are hanging out of her shorts, so you think that's what Ryuk is talking about, but instead he's talking about the apple she just made him. Like, shit like that, that's funny. I'll accept the fan service. However, we're going to move on to the next one. The next comic's only like 10 pages long. It's so weird. Some of these are like 5-10 pages long, and then one short story is going to be like 100 pages. Okay, Day in the Life of L was super fast. It was like not even 10 pages. Don't have much thought on it. Other than L's a big baby. Oh my god. Like, I know he was kind of like infantilized in the original series, but my god. Wataru even make like comments how like he has to get clothes for L. Like, L washes himself, but like also he needs to use like a human washer, which just looks like a washing machine. He goes to the bathroom real weird. He like crouches down but faces backwards. Okay, weirdo. And then like he needs help putting his own clothes on. Wataru has to take him everywhere. He loves the amusement park. He loves regular parks, but he mostly stays in his room solving cases, and that's the day in the life of L. And it's really funny because it's not like a full day, because in the beginning he went 102 hours without sleeping and then continued to sleep for 17 hours, but like sideways in the chair. Like, not only was he sideways, but so was the chair. What a weird guy. What a baby. So we're going to move on to Whammy's house, and it looks real cute because we get to see a kid L, and I'm excited. That was even shorter. Okay, wow, I didn't expect to check in so fast. But cute. Saw baby L. He went to the orphanage nameless, so I guess he was always L. He beat up some kids when he first got there because they threatened to show the new guy how it's done. So it reminds me, because he said he was justified, and it reminds me that L is very much like the end justifies the means. He even says in another short story that he will cheat to get what he wants, so guess it starts from childhood. He asked for computers, got it, and then he found a case that was like unsolvable. He always loved puzzles, difficult puzzles and clues and whatnot. And then they show him getting really excited because there's a murder case with no clues, and yet he still solved it. And that's when Wataru, or Mr. Whammy, was like, yep, that's the path I'm gonna follow. And that's L's story. That's the beginning. So now I probably won't check in for a while because I'm on the last story called Taro Kagami. And it is the rest of the book, so I won't have to check in as fast. That is nice. I'm going to take a break real quick, get some water, and then I'll get reading. So I finished Taro Kagami, which means I finished the short story collection. So Taro Kagami, I guess I should have done more research before reading it, but it's the pilot of Death Notes. I guess it's what they put on the drawing table before writing the Death Note that we know of. Which, like, now story aspects were making sense. But Taro opens up with a 13-year-old. He finds the Death Note. He doesn't realize what it is, so he uses it as a diary, puts kids' names in that bullied him. The kids die. And he's like, whoa! And then he puts more names in. They die, and they're like, whoa! The police get involved, which have obviously evolved into the Japanese task force for the series that we know of. The older guy is very suspicious. He clearly makes it a case, but then Ryuk introduces an eraser, so I guess this is definitely a major change. If you erase the names, these people come back to life as long as they're not cremated. And it's interesting because in the series we know one of the rules is once someone's dead, they're dead. There's no coming back. So clearly they scrapped that idea. The five boys come back to life, but then the police come to question them. They die again. So obviously there's a second Death Note. My dumbass is like, oh my god, it's Light Yagami. And then it hit me like, no, this came out before the first chapter of Death Note. And it turns out it's the other kid, Miura, who is being bullied as well. He's about to write Taro's name in the Death Note when Taro finds him. And he's like, no, tackles him, tells him what's up. They go to the police and tell them what happened, and they even prove it. Taro has Miura kill him and just bring him back to life. And then the police are like, no one can ever know about this, and burn the notebook. And then there is a time skip, so Taro goes from 13 to 20. There's this whole like Death Note shebang, but like it's like all fake. People, whether or not it's a real notebook is still up for debate, and obviously Taro's like because he kept his. It ends with Taro and Ryuk mocking a survey. So that's it. I don't know if I actually like the short story. I was kind of getting bored. But it's just interesting to see how what the series we know evolved from this, because like no eraser. I feel like if the series we know had that eraser, it would have created a lot more plot holes, and like things would have just came way too easily. Something I did find interesting though was that Taro had the idea, 13-year-old Taro, not the time skip. He had the idea to use it to kill off criminals and use it for good. So obviously that evolved to Light Yagami, just more evil. Taro was clearly nicer than Light Yagami was. And it's interesting because later the police officer was like, what if you could kill people with your mind? Which is obviously a connection that L makes. So L was clearly like, these are clearly the L prototypes. But the older police officer was like, if I had it, I would just kill off all the people that know. And then the younger one was like, oh, well, I would kill off the people who aren't meant to be in this world. They're doing nothing. We are better off without them. And then, just create world peace for those that are left. That was Light's philosophy. And the older guy was like, the majority of mankind would be dead then. Which goes back to the moral of the story we know. We're all flawed human beings. Nobody has the right to decide who can and cannot live and what your punishment is. So it's just so interesting for such a short story, because it's only like 50 pages. It evolved into the 12-volume series that we know. And even then, like, Taro Kagami becomes Light Yagami. And then even like Taro's older at the time skip look, it's clearly what Mikami is based on. I just think that's really cool. Despite not like liking this, it's cool to compare and contrast it to the series that we know. I love seeing how stories evolve. But that's it. That's the end of this. I did think a couple more things about when it comes to Akira. The main dude, now I can't remember his name, or Minoru, I think. I remember when I was talking about that short story, I said he's a good person of sorts, but I felt like I didn't feel too confident saying that, and it finally hit me. He's greedy. Like, that's why he wanted all that money. And, like, yeah, I mean, you can argue he's not because he had it shared. But did he have the money shared from the kindness of his heart? Or so he wouldn't get caught, and that was the easiest way he could do it? Because at the end of the day, he was greedy. He did it for the money. Finally clicked why I was uncomfortable calling him, like, a perfectly good person. Still better than Light Yagami, though. I will take Minaru over Light Yagami if I had to choose like who to hang out with, who's a better person. Minaru all the way. Now that I said that, because Minaru died, he used a notebook, blah blah blah. Taro doesn't die, so I guess they didn't think of that concept yet. And another thing, he asked Taro how was the land of death, and Taro just looks scared. And I guess that's another concept they ended up changing, because if there's a land of death in the pilot, however, the series we know, there is no land of death. When humans die, they just go to nothing. Again, I love seeing series evolve. That's so interesting. But yeah, those are my final thoughts on Death Note short stories. I did end up finishing this in a day. I was not expecting that. I don't have much else to say. Maybe I would give this like at least 3 out of 5 stars. It's a better than a 3 out of 5 star read, but I'm not going to give it 5 out of 5 stars. But it was a good book. It's a good companion series. If you do like the original Death Note series, I would recommend picking this up and reading it. I think it brings more information to the table. But yeah, that's it for this video. I don't have much else to say, so let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you've read this. And if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. And without further ado, I'm going to peace out, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao a tutti.